Hi everyone, this is Emily Schisler from the Accelerator team, here to give you an expedited version of the final part of a Content Vision deep dive. This video will recap where you've been and give you some next steps to hopefully translate your now paper-based vision into actual manifestation in your network. As a reminder, I'm going to have you pause the video already, read this goal to yourself as a reminder of the purpose in the work that you're doing through this deep dive. Want to hit on that point that we are hoping that you use an effective change management strategy to ultimately come up with, again, on the page, a vision for content at your network, and then how you translate that content vision to actual classroom manifestation, which sometimes does involve selecting a new curriculum. In the early part of this content vision deep dive, back in the winter, you had two sessions. One was on defining the vision, and one was on pitching that vision to the College Ready VAR and then working to invest others in that. Following that, you led some working group meetings at your networks to actually draft content visions. Once those were in place, some of you met with me for ELA and some of you met with Stephanie Lyon for math to pressure test your visions with each other, provide feedback and probe to then take that and take it to the finish line with a more finalized product. This session is really kind of here in this fourth bucket where we're going to talk about aligning your vision to programmatic decisions that can help you really translate paper to classroom. There are other sessions that were formal on choosing a math and ELA curriculum. Since it's the end of the year, this might not be the best time to talk about choosing a new curriculum, but if that's something you're interested in, I will follow up with you individually to talk about what makes the most sense and how to explore what is out there. In the early sessions, like I just referenced, defining the vision and investing others, you're really working in these first couple of buckets of Kotter's change management strategy. You're developing urgency around why it is that you need this vision. And together with a guiding coalition or your small group, you were putting together a vision for what you wanted to see happen in that content area. Today's session is going to focus more on these final portions of Kotter's change management, especially this eighth one about institutionalizing the change. A vision is important and it's going to be lofty and inspirational. And if it's only a piece of paper, it's not going to lead to change for your students at your network. So that is why we're going to talk about aligning programmatic decisions to your vision and then back to what's happening in your networks and schools. I'm going to do that by talking about the 5 big rocks you're going to want to align: your schedule, your curriculum and assessment, your budget, hiring, and training. Now, a lot of these have a lot of overlap, and just want to state that from the beginning. And there is a resource that you should have received also alongside this quick video that has some guiding questions for you to ask yourself to help, again, align those programmatic decisions. So if you're thinking about schedule, here are some questions to ask yourself about how to use to create a schedule that will enable you to make it possible to have your content vision in place. So like I said, these are the 5 big buckets. I'm going to give just a very quick case study for each, then push you to the questions that you can use to do this work yourself. So let's start with a case study for schedule. At Yes Prep, where I was the director of literacy for a number of years, we talked about how what truly mattered for us was creating lifelong readers who had a love and value of reading. And that was in our actual vision document. In its many iterations over the years, love and value of reading was front and center. And it dawned on us that if it was just on the paper, it wasn't going to actually manifest in kids who loved and valued reading. So we added into the long-term plan that students would have daily time for independent reading, and we added into daily lesson plans that's every kid in every subject from 6 to 12 was going to have daily independent reading time in our ELA classes, including a former student here of mine who is a reluctant reader who became someone who loved reading over the course of the year. And how did we make that happen? We had to allot more time in the schedule for ELA. We gave 100 minutes daily for ELA, which made it easy to carve out 15 minutes for students to read for choice. They read novels and all sorts of other things as well, but we gave them independent reading. And I also just want to point out that now so many of my former students are on social media, and so many of them have truly turned into lifelong lovers and valuers of reading. So, and that wouldn't have been possible if we had said, just go home and do this. We believe it to be true. So we had to align our schedule and carve out more time for ELA to make this happen. That's a very quick case study. Here's some questions you can ask yourself to help translate your vision for what you need in math or science or ELA and make it happen. Pause here and let you ask yourself those questions. So here's another case study if we're going to talk about aligning curriculum and assessment. It's one thing to say that this is what we believe is important about writing, for example, or about discussion, and it's another to say, and here is how we're going to assess that, and here is how we're going to put together vertically aligned curriculum. So I wanted to just spotlight Brooklyn Prospect, a Cohort 2 Accelerator School, who did the work to lay out on the page what it would mean, for example, in writing, to have curriculum covered grade level by grade level. This is kindergarten, for example, but this existed for K all the way to 12 or 12 all the way to K. And listing it all out, the work that they did, helped them say, this is what we want to be true of our kindergarten writers and our 12th grade writers and everything in between. So in creating a skills progression and then also creating an interim assessment blueprint that took the information from this skills progression and turned it into what was tested throughout the year really helped them get concrete about translating their vision for what they wanted to be true of their writers and their discussers and their readers into, once again, something tangible in classrooms that made change. So here are some questions for you to ask yourself to think about how you align your curriculum and assessment to the work in your network. And this is also a plug to say, if you're in a place where every teacher is writing his or her own lesson plans every day, it may be time to look into a more centralized curriculum. If you're interested in talking about that, I'm going to follow up with you to find out if that's true. But if it is that teachers are doing their own work to do their own planning, how will you know that they have deeply internalized the vision for the content so when you go into classrooms that are planned kind of one-on-one, how will you see that? Okay. Another important aspect to align to make sure that your vision translates is budget. A case study I want to spotlight is from Edward Brooke Charter School, where they have a similar priority vision on love and value of reading. And because of that, they allocate a pretty significant amount of money every single year to teachers to grow or continue to grow their classroom libraries and to make sure that scholars have individual copies of class texts. They've said this is what it would look like to show value of love and reading in our classrooms, and so we're going to have to put our money where our mouth is. It's important to note that different people are in different places financially, and if you do allocate some money to ELA, does that mean you're having less for science, or if you're allocating some for science and vice versa? So that's why, it's important to think about this bigger picture, but are there places where you really just need to think about the budget as being what would hold you back from making your vision concretely manifest? that was a very fast-forwarded version, but here are some questions to ask yourself as you're thinking about using your budget or budgeting to translate vision to classroom. Relatedly, hiring. Do you need to hire more talent in different places to help you enact your vision? I wanted to just point out that, for example, at Achievement First, we have chosen to hire a lot of people into our teaching and learning team who write the curriculum that's open source for all of you, to develop the leaders and teachers within that curriculum. And we've said this is what really matters to us, and we need a whole bunch of people on the ground to actually write this curriculum. It won't work. We won't have the movement we want to see in student achievement if we drop the ball on having good products for kids and for teachers. So we hired a bunch of people to make that happen. Note, of course, the crossover between this and budget. Do you have the talent you need to translate your vision to actual classroom manifestation? Here are some questions that you could ask yourself again as you're thinking about this. I want to point out too, this language of tiering things, you might have to make some sacrifices along the way, or you might have to say this is what goes first and maybe we'll add this along the way. That's true for a bunch of these. Just have that in mind. Last thing I wanted to note was training. This is also related to budget, and this is also related to hiring. But ask yourself, how will we make sure as we train our leaders and as we train our teachers that what we say is what we want for students in science or students in social studies to be true is actually happening? So how are you training people within that vision? Achievement First, for example, stages a series of trainings over the summer, starting with new leaders. There's a new leader training, then an all leader training, then a new teacher training, then an all teacher training. And each of those new people start at the vision level at each training and then have some tangible trainings related to that vision, but what you're going to choose to focus on a piece of that. So how are you training folks within that vision? And then correlative question, do you have the internal manpower to do that, or do you need to outsource? So another example of this within training would be that Yes Prep, once upon a time, a very long time ago, decided to grow our own teacher development program called Teaching Excellence. We decided that that was the kind of the right move, and we had the talent to make that work. Other networks, for example, KIPP Houston decided, I don't think we do have the right manpower to be able to train all of our new teachers, and we're going to outsource this to Relay Grad School, for example. We're going to outsource our teacher training. So as you're thinking about the talent you need to implement a vision and make sure it's happening, are there places where you do need and do have internal talent? And then are there places where you can outsource to something that already exists, like the Standards Institute, so that you kind of get that same work, but don't have to literally lead it yourself? Here are some additional questions to ask yourself about what training needs to happen so that you can translate vision to reality. So now would be a good time, if you haven't already, to pause, use these questions, and reflect on where you are. And now you're looking probably at a very long list of all the things you need to do. And so I encourage you to bucket them into what you need to do right now, what you need to do soon, and what can wait for later. So again, pause the video and go through and categorize what's now, what's soon, and what's later. This was a very quick final portion of a deep dive that has had a long delay. So I do want to note that what comes next is working on aligning your vision, that paper vision that hopefully is finalized by now, to reality for your next school year. I'll reach out to you individually to follow up, and of course, here for questions as you have them. Thanks for listening. Thanks for participating. Excited to see your content visions manifest at